Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Arna Sahu, host of Arna's News, and if you are a newcomer, welcome to this channel. I give you warm greetings digitally. Today, we are with a special guest, Miss Jill Wetzler. She is an engineering leader, a coach, and an advisor to startups, and most recently, she was the vice president of engineering at Pilot, where her teams built financial software that helped startups with their bookkeeping and taxes. Jill has built and led teams at Salesforce, Twitter, and Lyft with a focus on team culture, diversity, recognition, and performance management. These are just a few of the topics that she has real-world stories with. And so with that said, if you are here again, thank you for clicking back to this channel, and be sure to come back here for a newer episode. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah. I'm really glad that we were able to work through this interview after so many of difficulties on my part, but yeah, I'm so excited. Okay, so my first question I have to ask for you is, can you tell me a bit about your career path?
Absolutely. So my interest in computer science really started in college, and I was lucky enough to have a computer at home growing up. This is kind of in an age when most of my friends didn't have computers in their houses. And I liked playing games on my computer. I taught myself some very basic HTML skills, but I hadn't really done anything beyond that. And I wound up going to Carnegie Mellon University, which is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I majored in computer science kind of on a fluke. I just couldn't think of anything better to do. And it was a very good school, a very good program. So I thought I would try it out and then just switch to something else if it wasn't for me. And luckily, even though, there weren't very many women in my class, I wound up enjoying myself. I toughed it out through their program, and then got my first full-time job at Salesforce in sort of the early days of Salesforce, when most people that I knew hadn't even heard of them, which is kind of wild to think about now. I worked there for 7 years as a software engineer, and then eventually as an engineering manager, and I got to see them grow from a very small company into like a 10,000 person company. After that, I spent a couple of years managing teams at Twitter, kind of before and after their IPO, and then went to Lyft, where I built out the infrastructure team over a period of 4 years. And I also got to experience an IPO at Lyft. After that, I became the VP of engineering at a startup called Pilot, where I stayed for about 2.5 years. Built out their engineering team, worked on a bunch of their HR processes, kind of helped scale the team from that really small, like scrappy startup into a company that was maturing. And I recently left there as of about a month ago, and now I'm on a break.
That's really cool. I love your experience of going from one place to another. I really like how like motivated you were, because, you didn't really know computer science, but then you took that leap of faith and now here you are. That's super cool.
Very lucky.
Yeah, this kind of goes for my next question that I have, which is, what kind of advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours? And do you have any tips to succeed in that matter?
Yeah, I love this question. The first advice I would have is to not be too particular about following someone's exact footsteps. My path is one that was very challenging. I worked in a lot of, scaling companies that were kind of going through high growth phases. It was also exciting, was also sometimes a bit exhausting, but also I think my path was very lucky. Like, I happened to pick some really good companies, and most importantly, I picked some really good people to work with. So I have 2 general pieces of advice. The first is to find really good people and just attach yourself to them. So whether that's like a really smart and kind person in some of your classes, maybe a professor, if you're in the workforce, a good boss or a really senior coworker, basically someone who likes you, who you like working with, and who has some amount of like power to advocate for you. I had a professor in college who helped me get through some really tough classes and tough times. I don't think I would have graduated without him. After college, I actually wound up having the same boss off and on for, I don't know, about a decade. We worked together at three different companies, Salesforce, Twitter, and Lyft. And I've had a lot of peers and direct reports who've worked with me at multiple companies too. Who you work with is so important, not just for your career progression, but also for your everyday mental health. You're going to spend a lot of time at work. It should be with people who look out for you and who make work fun. The second piece of advice I have is just to be curious, always curious. Don't get stuck idolizing someone and thinking that you have to follow exactly what they did. Treat everyone you meet as someone who can help you either develop a new skill or help you find a type of task that you enjoy, whether that person is in the same role as you or in the role that you want, or whether they're more senior or more junior than you. When you eventually find yourself in the workforce, it's important to not let your job description box you in to what you think you're supposed to be doing. Just because you're a software engineer doesn't mean that you can't contribute to the design of your product. You have a unique combination of talents and interests, and literally no one is like you. Over time, as you really start to settle in your career, your goal is going to be to find a company and a position that's going to take advantage of the unique talents that you bring to a job.
Yeah, I really like how versatile your advice is for like so many other people. Like if you're a software engineer, you can think about the artistic perspective. You know, if you're a UI UX designer, you can think about like the code and how like efficient it is. And that like goes for like everybody, you know?
Great.
Yeah. Okay. My next question that I have is what is a common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
So I think this is actually a great segue from what you just said. I think the biggest myth is that computer programming and really like STEM in general is for nerds who like math and science. And if you're someone who likes more creative pursuits like art or language or music, that maybe STEM is not for you. I think that's a myth. I'm a musician. I like doing crafts. I like writing. I actually have a creative writing minor. And I'm so much more than the little software programmer who started at Salesforce 15 years ago. In fact, STEM is really creative. Programming a computer is creative. In so many instances, you're solving problems that haven't been solved yet. And that takes a really creative mind, even if you're working on math problems. Speaking as someone who manages teams, the best teams are ones that are diverse, and not just diverse in gender and race, though that's really important and something that I have like committed my entire career to. But really, like the reason for that is that my best teams have had maybe your kind of stereotypical studious programmer with a college degree, maybe they went and got a computer science degree from Carnegie Mellon. And then maybe somebody who majored in English, but later taught themselves database administration. And then someone on your team who thinks about ethics of data privacy, and then someone who loves to build beautiful interfaces. I've worked with all of these types of folks before, and when they're all on a team together, that's when the magic happens. Those are also the most fun teams to be on too, because everyone winds up bringing something different to the team and everyone gets to learn new skills. So if you like computers and then maybe you like programming and you want to be a software engineer, that's amazing, but mostly you just want to solve problems in the world, there is space for you in STEM. We are not going to be able to hire enough computer programmers within the next like several years, just with like however many people are coming out of computer science programs in college, which is why you start to see so many people like taking classes with boot camps, or switching their careers kind of halfway through. They've like decided that they want to do something completely different, or they want to have a higher salary. There's room for everybody and room for everybody's talents and interests.
Thank you.
I think, Arna, you have like a similar story around this, because when you and I first spoke, you said you didn't want to get into STEM initially. Like, can you tell me a little bit about what changed your mind?
Yes, of course. So, of course, like I wasn't actually interested in STEM. I actually hated it completely, like with my whole life, because I saw how much my dad worked like as a software engineer and software engineering manager.
Uh-huh.
But I just saw how boring it was because I would always tag along in his meetings and offices on like my days where I didn't have school. And I just promised myself that I would never join STEM. But that all changed like 2 years ago when I started to learn how to code and saw kind of like the design aspect of it, of like how I could like change things to make it more artistically appealing through like JavaScript and everything like that. And after learning those types of skills, it kind of switched my mind to think that, oh, computer science and STEM and all of this isn't just about, the stereotypical nerd just like, learning math on their free time. It's not like
Uh-huh.
that. It's like, it's completely different. And I think that was my biggest takeaway. And now I've enjoyed STEM ever since. And yeah.
I love that, because there are a lot of people who find JavaScript and like interfaces really boring or really difficult, but they like other aspects of programming and computer science. And that's exactly why we need people with a diversity of interests and passions, because somebody has to write the JavaScript for us.
Yeah, of course.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that versatility and like it could like go out in a different way because everybody has like room for something. It doesn't matter if they like this or that. There's always space because like it's a new learning path for others. So I think that's what interests me most in STEM. Yeah,
Cool.
super cool.
Yep. Great.
Okay, my next question is if you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
Great question. I would probably like take our last conversation to its logical conclusion and ask, what if I just don't want to be an engineer? Like, what if programming computers or working with the kind of nitty gritty details and internals of technology is not aligned with the things that I'm passionate about? And my answer to that would be that there's still room for you in tech, like in the tech industry. Tech is a very encompassing term, especially like if you live in the Bay Area and you talk to like anybody that you come across on the street. Most of them are going to say, I work in tech, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're programmers. Tech is a great place to be because of the job stability, the salaries that you can make, and inside of the companies that make some of your favorite apps. So think like DoorDash or Lyft or TikTok. There's so many different types of jobs, and you can work in tech without working on the actual code. So these companies are going to have big legal teams. They're going to have designers who work with the programmers making the actual app. And they're going to have designers who are working in the marketing department, who build the content that you might see on the website or the ads that are shown on billboards or TV. They have a technical writing team who is going to help write really good documentation. Some of that might be internal documentation. Some of it might be external for users. There will be product managers who are thinking up new features for the app. They have localization experts who will help translate the product into other languages. They're going to have community engagement teams who will spend time like connecting and talking directly with users, or, in the case of Lyft, with drivers, and then policy teams who will work with government agencies. Literally so many different types of jobs that you can have within a tech company. So you don't have to limit yourself to becoming a programmer if that's really not what you want to do. Now, that being said, having any kind of programming experience, even just a few college courses, I think is really beneficial these days, because it will help you understand these products better and what goes into building them. I really think like having that foundation can make anybody within a tech company better at their job. But overall, I really want people to understand that you can work in these companies that build the cool technology that you use, and you can do that without having to be an actual programmer on the app.
Yeah, that's like the advice that so many people need to hear. I mean, just because you might not think that, oh, I don't like this, doesn't mean that you're like out of like the group. You can definitely still join, because your interests are some of the biggest things that control tech by itself. And yeah, I think that's so important for people to know.
Right. These companies wouldn't be what they are without great designers, without localization, without a legal team. So those groups are just as important within your companies as the team that's like building the actual application.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so that kind of leads, like the previous question kind of leads to this one, which is, what are the best resources that have helped you find your own career path?
Yeah, I think the best resources have been people, like the people around me. I've been really lucky to have some really good bosses and good mentors who I can learn from. I try to make connections with everyone that I cross paths with. Like every job I have, every meetup or conference I go to, every time, I'm talking to a friend and they tell me I should know someone, I want to make that connection. I never know when I'm going to meet someone, and I often do. I've also worked with a few really great executive coaches. Coaches are people who can kind of help you get unstuck at work by helping you think through your challenges and opportunities. It's almost like a therapist, but for like work specifics. So whenever I'm thinking about making a big career move, or if I'm like struggling with something at my company, I'll seek out advice from my coaches, my mentors, maybe my former bosses, and basically just a number of people in my network who I think can give me different perspectives. And these are going to be people from all walks of life, different companies, different roles. Some of them might even be less experienced than me. Getting a bunch of different perspectives helps me really hone in on what I want and ensures that I've thought through everything. And sometimes these people will tell me what I want to hear. Sometimes they don't, and they'll give me some things to consider that I hadn't thought of. And also, like, sometimes my mentors will caution me against doing what I know in my heart I want to do. And that's okay, because I always wind up making the best decision for myself. A lot of us have kind of different goals, different things that we're optimizing for. And so my goal is just to like take in as much information as possible and then kind of decide what aligns with my desires and my values.
Okay, yeah. I really like how you said that there's that you never stop at like a connection, you always know that there's someone out there who's willing to help you. And I think that's a really nice way of telling people that they're not alone in a journey. If they're, confused, there's always people around them. And I think that knowing that kind of like grasp for help is like so important.
Yeah. There's actually like some interesting research out there about how women and men build networks, and we tend to build networks that look very different. So men tend to build these very broad networks where, you know, it's all about volume. Like, how many people do you know? So they tend to have really shallow relationships with people, but they know a lot of people and they build networks with the purpose of kind of progressing in their careers. Women, on the other hand, tend to build smaller networks, but with much, much deeper relationships. And so I have tried to kind of create a mix of both. I'm definitely a connector. That's like one of my strengths is just like, you know, knowing people, connecting with people, and then being able to connect people in my network with each other. And so that's something that I really strive to do, because having a wide network actually will serve you really well. And for women, having men in their network also tends to serve them well, not because men are better mentors, but because men tend to have kind of more access to power. So it's actually something that I've been really thoughtful about. Just a little trivia.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't actually know that about like the differences between the connections and how they build between like both genders. That's actually very, very interesting. I guess I learn a new thing every day, you know? Okay. I have a few additional questions if that's all right, since we have a little bit of time. If that's all right of you, of course. But one question I have is, what's one thing you wish you had known before or when you began your career?
Oh, there are so many answers to this question. I think I'm going to fall back on this like one piece of advice that I always say, which is know your worth. And what I mean by this is, first of all, don't feel like you have to stay somewhere where you're not respected. Don't go above and beyond for people who don't value it. You know, I think this is like a tough lesson to learn. And also sometimes we have to, right? Like sometimes we just need a job. Sometimes we have to stay in situations that are like not perfect. At the end of the day, work is work. Like if we wouldn't work if we didn't have to. But you know, if you do have to stay in environments for a period of time that, you know, maybe don't really speak to your soul, I think it's really important that you figure out how to not let negative people or negative environments affect the way that you value yourself or see your value in an organization. And I think if I had known this, there are times sort of throughout my career where I might have stood up for myself a little more loudly, or times where I would have switched teams sooner than I did, or even switched companies sooner than I did. So I think it's really important for us to, you know what kind of unique value we bring to an organization. At the end of the day, you know, not every organization is for you. One of the things that I've told people who have gotten fired at jobs, is that, you know, a lot of times it's about fit. Like, are you the right fit for what a company needs in the moment? And is the company a good fit for you and what you're hoping to accomplish and the type of skills that you bring to the table? And so it's really important to not let sort of what's happening in a business, which like the business is always going to optimize for itself and for its shareholders. It's really important that you kind of stand in your own power and know what value you bring and know what your worth is.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great reminder, because so many people out here, like youngsters, including myself, kind of forget where we stand and kind of just like listen to like other people because, you know, you think that they're more experienced, so they should quote unquote know what's better for you. But, you know, just really knowing where you stand kind of is more reassuring. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's important to be humble and to know that you can learn from anyone and every experience. All of the like bad experiences that I've had in my career, are things that like ultimately I wind up being grateful for. Like I can see what I took away from them, what I learned from them. Even if like the biggest thing I learned is the warning signs of what to avoid in like a future company that I might be interviewing with. And so those things are valuable. So it's all about finding that balance of making sure that you're like treating every opportunity as an opportunity to learn, but also like, being confident and always putting yourself first.
Yeah, it's like in the tech industry, of course, it's really easy to burn down after
Oh
like
yeah.
after not listening to yourself. So, those you should stay humble. I think that reminding yourself of your own needs is like really important as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another question since we have a little more. How do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things within your role?
Always learning, always learning. I treat every situation, every new relationship, every new person I meet as an opportunity to learn. You're probably familiar with the term growth mindset, which is a mindset that you have in which every failure or every challenge in front of you is an opportunity to grow as a person. And I think having that mindset is the best way to continuously learn. Of course, there are a few blogs I read. There's some conferences I like to go to. There are a bunch of trainings that I like management trainings, and those things are very like structured ways of learning. But mostly, there's actually this model. It's called the 70-20-10 model, where it says like 10% of what you learn and like 10% of your development at work comes from these very structured training. 20% comes from like the people around you, and then 70% comes from just like on the job learning. So doing things that you've never done before. So that's really what it is like I try not to shy away from things just because I haven't done them before, just because they seem daunting. And then I lean on my network and all these people that I know to help me kind of figure it out. One of the biggest lessons that I got from a former boss was when I was working at Salesforce. It's like a few years in, and the tech lead on my team was about to move on to go to a different team. And they asked me to step into his role as tech lead. And it felt really intimidating to me at the time. Like I definitely didn't have the confidence to feel like I could do it. And also there was like somebody else on the team who was much more experienced. And I was like, well, why didn't you just ask him? It turns out they did ask him, and he wanted me to take the role because he thought it would be more beneficial for me, and he wasn't really interested in it. And I was super afraid of failing, and I got, into this back and forth with my boss about whether it was really appropriate for me to take this leadership role. And then my boss just point blank asked me, do you think it looks good for me if you fail? I wouldn't put you in this position if I didn't think you could do it. I'm going to help you. We're going to help you. And so I think about that like one of the earliest career lessons that I ever got. I think about it all the time. Every time there's like a scary opportunity in front of me, I think about all the people around me who do not want to see me fail, if for no other reason than it will make them look bad. And so it's like a nice reminder that we're like all in this together.
Yeah. Okay. My last question for you is what do you think is the vital factor that shaped your career? As you probably mentioned before, but what was your life before learning it, and what was your life after learning it?
Ooh, this is a big question. And I think maybe it comes back to what I was talking about earlier with like know your worth. So something that's come up maybe in the past like 5 years or so is really just learning that I'm so much more than my job and my career. And this is especially pronounced right now that I'm taking this like break from my job for a few months. And it's this opportunity for me to really get to explore who I am outside of my work identity, outside of being a VP of engineering, which is like a very big accomplishment and something I'm really proud of. But it's not solely who I am. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in work, especially in America. Like in the US, so much of our lives hinge on what we do for work, like our access to affordable healthcare, our ability to put food in our fridge, even how valuable others perceive us to be tends to come down to what we do for work. And I think this is kind of, I'm like realizing how sad this is. And before I realized how caught up I was in my job, like you asked me sort of before I learned this factor and then after, like before I worked really hard. Sometimes I worked really long hours. And when I wasn't at work, I was thinking about work or I was talking about work or I was complaining about work. I was always putting off trips or kind of investing in my hobbies because I was so tired or I was like chasing my next career accomplishment. And on top of that, just working in a really, I wouldn't say it's like a competitive industry, but you can get caught up in comparing yourself to like, wow, this person had like such a faster promotion than I did. And this person worked at this really big company and they went public and they must have made so much money. It's really easy to get caught up in that. And to worry about whether I am experiencing the right career progression or like if I'm on the right career path. But I think over the last few years, I've been doing a lot of kind of inner work. And I've come to realize just how silly this is. Like, I don't know why I would compare myself to other people when I've had so much success in my life and, and my career has afforded me the opportunity to like have stable housing and have food in my fridge and be able to travel. Like what an amazing thing. And life is short. The pandemic really taught us that. And the other thing I've noticed is when I travel to other countries, people don't really ask me what I do for work the same way that they do in the Bay Area. And I'm just a much more whole person now that I've decided to not let work rule my life. And now that I've come to accept that my career path is mine and only mine, and it's just a small piece of who Jill is.
Yeah, that is really really nice to hear because after a long time you were able to like figure out your own needs after like many years, and I think that's really common for other people. Like before they learn about their own worth, they're like they're struggling, but then once that kind of like light bulb moment happens in their head, they kind of prioritize their needs first, and that is so much that's like so much more refreshing and fulfilling for them. And I think that's really, really nice to hear.
Totally. Totally. I hope you figure it out sooner than I did.
Yeah. Okay. So thus, that concludes the episode for this week. If you want to know more about how I relate to these amazing topics, then stay tuned for upcoming episodes. Check out Ms. Jill's LinkedIn page, which I will mention, and make sure to come back to the channel very soon for a newer episode. Once again, thank you for finding me, and thank you so much, Miss Jill, for like everything, for being on this call with me. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Yeah,
proud of
thank you so much. Yeah, so Dito, you're listening to Arna Sahu, the host of Arna's News. Peace out. See you very soon. Toodles.